There is an upcoming exam and you don't know how to study. Do you want to accomplish a lot in a short time? Then you are in the right place. I am Kaitas and I raised my university GPA from 1.81 to 3.16 in my last 2 years of university. During this time, I passed many difficult exams and had to learn the most effective study methods. By using these methods, I study now less than other mechanical engineering master students and pass tough exams on the first try. Now I will explain how I did this and I share with you the strategies and the methods I used based on scientific research. These methods I am going to tell you about are not just for one exam, but for all exams. These are general learning principles that you can even apply when learning a language. The first method I use before starting to study a topic is to flip through the pages and get a broad overview. This method has significantly increased my study efficiency, and it will do the same for you. First, I open the textbook to the section I'll be studying and quickly glance over the pages. At this stage, I don't read anything. If there are any images or diagrams, I look at what they are and how the pages are structured. This gives me a sense of how long the topic is, how much of the pages are filled with text, images, diagrams, or graphs. Next, I go to the end of the topic to see if there are any questions related to it. Many textbooks include questions at the end of a section, or I check another source that has questions about the topic. This helps me understand which points are important and what I need to focus on when reading. Then I go back to the beginning of the topic and read the text written in both. This could be main or subheadings or important sentences that they want us to notice. At this point, I expose myself to the topic and now know what to expect. After that, I read a general definition of the topic or a summary if I can find one. This process takes about 5 minutes, but in these 5 minutes, I create a general framework about the topic. As I dive deeper in the details, I place those details into this framework. This method has been incredibly helpful for me, especially when studying challenging engineering subjects. Another method I recommend is active learning. There are two types of learning: passive learning and active learning. Scientific research shows that active learning is the most effective way to study. So what is active learning? Active learning is when learners don't just sit back and watch or listen, but instead actively engage with the material, challenging their minds as they try to learn. For example, if someone is explaining something to you and you are just sitting and listening, that's passive learning. Or if you are reading the same topic 4 to 5 times from a textbook, that's also passive learning. So how do you practice active learning? I'll explain it with 3 simple steps. The first step is to try to understand the topic. It may sound simple, but I am sure most of us don't fully do this. Yet it's the most crucial step. When I was in university, I placed great importance on truly understanding a topic. One of the reasons I was able to raise my GPA from 1.81 to 3.16 is this. Let me put it this way. You cannot learn a subject without pushing yourself and making an effort to understand it. So please don't make it your main goal to quickly finish the topic you are studying. Most students aim to complete their daily study schedule, leaving understanding in second place. But this is not the right approach. For example, if there was a part of the topic I didn't understand, I wouldn't let it go. I would research online, ask everyone, and wouldn't give up until I understood it. Please make it your main goal to truly understand topics rather than just finishing them. To better understand the topic, I will turn it into a story in my mind. This step is especially useful for understanding complex subjects. For instance, when studying thermal conduction in my heat transfer class, I would create a story in my head. Let's say there is a temperature difference on 2 sides of a wall. In my mind, I would imagine it like this. A group of energy molecules is so energetic that they cannot stay still and are moving back and forth, which causes them to start sweating. This makes their side the hot side. They are so overwhelmed by the heat that they begin a journey to the other side. Along the way, these molecules collide with other atoms in the wall, shedding their excess energy and transferring it to the other atom. This is how I would visualize it in my mind, and it helped me to understand the topic much better. You can apply this technique as well. The second step is to ask questions. Our brain learns by asking questions and searching for answers. So always keep keep these two questions in mind. First one how and the second one why. If you have the how question in the back of your mind, you will understand the topic much better. For example, let's use heat transfer again. When there is a temperature difference across a wall, ask yourself how does the heat transfer between two surfaces. When you ask yourself this question, your brain will focus on finding the answer as you read, improving your study efficiency. For the second question why, here is another example. Why does heat always flow from a higher temperature to a lower temperature? Because the energy molecules want to get rid of their excess energy and calm down. By asking why questions, your brain forms logical connections between ideas, making the topic more memorable. I use this technique often both in engineering and language learning, and it's been incredibly useful. I highly recommend you try it too. Another important step is to test yourself. This is the most crucial step. I will explain it with an experiment. A group of students was told to read a topic from start to finish 4 times, while another group was told to read it once and then take a test. The next day, both groups took a test. Which group do you think performed better? The group that took the test. That's because when we take a test, we actively use the information we have learned. And the more we use it, the better we learn. And that's why when I studied, I focused on solving problems rather than reading the material over and over. I used the test questions to identify gaps in my understanding and learn from them. In case of there weren't any available questions for the topic, I would create my own questions. For example, while studying a topic, I would come up with a few questions and write them down in Anki. On the front of the card, I would write the question I asked myself, and on the back I would write the answer. This method is actually one of the most effective ways to study. You create your own questions and then answer them. It's probably the most active form of learning and was incredibly helpful for me during my engineering studies. When studying a topic, I imagine someone asking me questions about it and try to answer them. This process of trying to answer questions helped me understand the material deeply and memorize it. I wish I had discovered it sooner. Before that, I was like most of you, rushing through the topics and focusing on rereading them multiple times. But once I started imagining someone asking me questions, I only needed to read the material once to memorize it. Another method is spaced repetition. You may have heard of this before. Let me explain this method with an experiment. In the experiment, 3 groups were formed, and all of them were given Spanish lessons. The first group received the 6-session course in 1 day. The second group had 1 session each day for 6 days. The third group had 1 session per month over a total of 6 months. Each group took a test at the end of the 6th session. The first and the second groups who completed the course in 1 day and 6 days scored similarly high, while the third group, who finished over 6 months, scored lower because they had forgotten much of the information. But here is the interesting part. All 3 groups were tested again 30 days later. And who do you think scored the highest this time? The group that had studied over 6 months with spaced intervals. This shows that information learned over long periods becomes more permanent in long-term memory. When we learn something, we tend to forget it over time, and we forget a large portion of it. That's why you need to refresh it regularly. We can conclude that what we learn over long periods gets stored in our long-term memory, while what we learn over short intervals gets stored in our short-term memory. So if you study consistently and review regularly, your learning will be more effective. For example, some students make the mistake of studying a topic by solving all the questions related to it and then moving on. Don't do this. After solving various types of questions, solve similar questions a week later and then again a month later. This way you review the material just as you are about to forget it, which makes the information much more important and permanent. I applied this spaced repetition technique a lot in engineering. The methods I discussed today are the ones I personally used and that saved my academic life. I am pretty sure that they will be very helpful for you too. Make sure to try them out and later leave a comment about how they worked for you. In my next video, I'll talk about the mistakes made while studying. I hope this video has been helpful for you. See you in the next video.